Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show y'all how to do the most basic foundation technique that it was the first thing that I learned. I threw it on the ground. It was the first thing that I learned how to do as an artist, and it was, well, as a wire artist, and it's something that I use probably every day that I'm doing wire wrapped jewelry, and that is, dun 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 dun, a wire bead link. So let's get started. So to make a bead link, all you're going to need is a bead and some wire. For this method, I recommend an 18 gauge or 20 gauge. You can go thicker. With wire gauges, the smaller the number, the thicker the wire. So a 10 gauge wire is going to be quite thick, while a 30 gauge wire is super fine. And I like to use dead soft wire. You can tell you're working with dead soft because if you bend it, does it stay where it went? With something that is harder, like a half hard or a full hard, you're going to have a really hard time getting it to bend and not have some sort of spring back. Also, you'll kind of get the feel of it the more you work with wire. But first things first, you want to make sure that your bead will actually go onto your wire. You can see with this one, at first it didn't want to go through. Sometimes in the drilling process there might be little bits of residue from the polishing or drilling medium, because they'll go in and like drill through one side and then drill through the other, and sometimes where they line up in the middle doesn't line up perfectly. So just fiddle with it a bit, but I try to use the thickest wire. Like right there, it's not going through, but if we just shift our angle of insertion a bit, it goes through. I like to use the thickest wire that I can with my bead, because the thicker the wire, the more secure it's going to be. And I'll show y'all in a future video a different technique for if you're using a thinner wire, if you want something more secure. So I have my bead strung on. I'm doing what I call working off the spool, where I'm not cutting off any specific length of wire. And then I'm coming in about a plier width in from the edge is how I gauge it, but really it's ending up being about a centimeter. And I use my finger pressed up against the back side of the wire, and then I just bend just like that at a 90-degree angle. And then we will take our round nose pliers, and there will be a list of all the tools and materials down in the little box below the video, so you can go there and see what kind of different stuff we're using. And you can see here I'm grabbing the wire as close to the tip as I can, and if you want to do a very small loop, I'd come in towards the very tip. If you wanted to do a very large loop, I'd come further up the jaws of the pliers, because it's basically using the pliers as a mandrel. And you know, you can use that to gauge, but for about a centimeter on these pliers, I go about, for a centimeter length of wire, I go about halfway up the nose of the pliers. And I just grip, and then I'm going to do this hand motion that's like this. And I'm going to grip it. And you can see I'm bracing this bottom part here with my thumbnail, giving it something to fight against. And just coming around. And that's one rotation of my hand. And you can see it's not quite a full loop. Like this isn't what we're going for. So I'm going to bring my hand back around, reinsert my pliers, and just bring her around the rest of the way. And so now you can see that made a very nice little loop. And the goal here with these is you want to make it look like a balloon. How it's a ball, a circle with a string coming out the bottom. I always think of it in terms of like a head, and this is the neck. And then the bead becomes the little body. And so you can just slide your bead up, just flush to right where the loop starts. And then we're going to come around to the other end, and I'm going to come in with my flat nose pliers. And I like flat nose pliers that have very, very thin tips, specifically for this purpose. It lets us get in quite close to the bead and then bend at a 90-degree. And you can see, since it's a thin tipped plier, it's not taking up nearly as much space as it would if I were using something like these pliers that have a much bolder tip. And then Well, I could have sworn I pulled out wire snips, but it looks like I didn't. We will need those for this project. Here we go. Got our wire snips. And then we're just going to cut about 1 centimeter from the bend. And I like to cut after doing that bend, that way I can still gauge it. But the more practice you do with this, the better you'll get at it. And the more you'll be able to gauge on your own how much you need. So again, from a different angle, you can see me grabbing it there. And don't worry right now at this point if they aren't perfectly flat and on the same plane. We'll deal with that here in a minute. So I'm going to hold on to the bead. Oops, that's okay if your pliers slip off. And also, you don't want to keep a death grip on this. You want it to be firm and secure, but not so much that you're marring up the wire. So you can see we bent it around. Then I'm going to insert my pliers back in. And if I didn't quite cut off enough wire, I just kind of scooched down towards closer to the tip of my wire. Or pliers, sorry. Words are pretty hard. And close it up this way. Pardon me for sniffling, I'm still getting over a cold. And then I'm going to use my thumbs to kind of flatten them out to where they're on the same plane. And there we go. You have a little bead link. And I recommend just practicing the heck out of this project because every single little bead link that you make, you can now make your own chains out of beads, like rosaries or necklace chains or bracelets, or you could take this and attach this end to an ear hook and attach to this end a little charm. Suddenly, you have earrings. But this one technique was basically all I had the first time I did a craft show. It was just a bunch of stuff where I was just making little wire loops all day long and then featuring the beads. Because whether you're using acrylic or gemstone or polymer clay, this technique really features the natural beauty of the bead and lets you kind of show that off while building up your basic wire wrapping skills, because there's only a short cry from doing this to working on projects like this. And we'll get you there. Just keep watching these videos and keep practicing, and please be patient with yourself. This takes a lot of practice, but every single bead that you do is another opportunity to hone your skills and get that much better. So I do want to show you one more technique, and that is how to open and close jump rings. You can see here, this is an open jump ring. This is a closed jump ring. Whenever you go through and assemble your little bead links that you've made, you could go through and open up the little loops and hook, pretend this is another bead link. You could either hook them together, or if you'd rather, you could leave that little wire closed and you could come through with a jump ring. This is a 16 gauge jump ring. Again, there'll be links to the materials down below, and you can just hook on your little pieces. I'm just going to grab something and you can just hook on and join two pieces of a thing together and then keep going from there. And that gives a much different look than if you were to just hook the eye of the bead link through the loop on your component. So the way that I open jump rings and the way that I recommend to, oh geez, this is saw cut, so it gets kind of hard to find the closure sometimes. You always want to open them like that, to where it comes off kind of in that angle. And then to close them, you want to get as good and smooth and solid of a closure as you can. So I come in and I push together, and there's quite a bit of inward pressure happening too. And as I wiggle it back and forth, I'm pushing my pliers together, because whenever a jump ring is cut, it removes just a tiny bit of material, but it can leave a gap there. And I don't want any body hair or a fingernail or the fabric of your clothing that you're wearing. I don't want anything to get snagged between those two pieces of wire. A lot of people, whenever they are opening a jump ring, will sometimes want to grip it and wrench it apart. I don't know, it's quite difficult, and it's bad for the ring, because if you wrench the ends away from each other as opposed to like this, then you're going to have a pretty hard time getting it to go back to being a perfect circle. You're going to have a hard time getting the ends to come back together. So let's see, even trying my best, after opening it the way that I opened it, you can see the difference between a perfectly round ring, excuse me, and one that we tried to wrench open. So yeah, so there's those techniques, guys. Hey guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me for this tutorial. I hope that it was helpful to you. It's like I had said, it's beginner, but honest to goodness, you can have this be as fancy as you want, and you can do it as meticulously and perfect as you want. But as a professional, I've used it almost every day in almost every project for about 10 years. So beginner doesn't mean it's not like gluing popsicle sticks together. This is a foundation technique that you're going to be able to build a whole plethora of skill sets off of. So I'm really excited to see what y'all start making. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, I'd love to hear from you. There'll be links down in the video description below, like the little box below the video that you're watching. Where you can find me on social media and you can share pictures of what you've made, or you can tag me on Instagram. And there's also links to my Patreon, and that's where we do periodic giveaways, we do monthly craft crates, I do digital downloadable content, all kinds of stuff over on our Patreon, and all of the pledges from $1 and up go towards supporting these free daily tutorials for y'all, as well as our artisan education efforts that we do whenever we're traveling around to conventions and different things. So thank you so much to the generosity of our patrons, and to all of y'all who are liking this and watching it and sharing it and making stuff. And it's like, y'all make this possible for us. So thank you so much, and happy crafting. We'll see you next video. Mwah. Bye.